The first thing I lost wasn't money. It wasn't my home. It wasn't my reputation. It was my sense of certainty. The certainty that the people around me were who they claimed to be. I used to believe trust was built slowly, over years of shared moments, late-night conversations, inside jokes, promises made casually and never questioned. I believed that if someone stayed long enough, they must be safe. That belief cost me everything. At the time, my life looked stable from the outside. I had people around me, friends who checked in regularly, family members who claimed to care, colleagues who smiled easily and spoke about support and teamwork. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't struggling either. I thought I was building something steady. What I didn't realize was that stability can be the most dangerous illusion. It makes you stop checking your footing. The first warning sign came quietly. A conversation that felt slightly off. A reaction that didn't match the situation. A comment that sounded supportive but landed strangely. I noticed it, then ignored it. That was my mistake. I had started trusting people automatically. I shared plans without thinking twice. I spoke openly about my goals, my worries, my next steps. I assumed transparency invited loyalty. What it actually invited was opportunity. Opportunity for people who were listening with different intentions. At first, things began slipping in small, almost invisible ways. A missed opportunity one couldn't explain. A rumor I heard about myself that didn't sound like something I'd ever say. A door that quietly closed without warning. Each time, there was an explanation. Bad timing. Miscommunication. Nothing personal. And every time, someone close to me reassured me. Don't worry. It'll work out. I've got your back. I believed them. I didn't realize that reassurance was part of the process. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happened in layers. I remember sitting at my desk one evening, staring at an email that made no sense. A decision had been made, one that directly affected me, and I hadn't been consulted. Worse, the explanation referenced concerns I'd never raised. Concerns I'd only discussed privately. My stomach tightened. I told myself I was being paranoid. I didn't want to become suspicious of the very people I trusted. I told myself trust meant giving the benefit of the doubt. So I stayed quiet. That silence gave them room. Soon, things started disappearing. Not physically, but structurally. Support vanished. Opportunities dried up. People stopped returning calls. When I asked questions, the answers were vague. When I pushed, I was told I was being difficult. Slowly, subtly, the narrative shifted. I wasn't unlucky anymore. I was the problem. That realization hit me one night when I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I wasn't spying. I wasn't searching. I was just there. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. The people I trusted weren't just failing to protect me. They were actively benefiting from my fall. I stood there, frozen, listening as my name was mentioned casually, like a topic already decided, a story already agreed upon. Things I'd shared in confidence were being repeated as facts, twisted just enough to justify decisions that pushed me further out. My chest felt hollow. Not angry. Not shocked. Hollow. Because once you hear the truth, you can't unhear it. And the truth was this. I had trusted the wrong people. And the moment I did, everything I had built started to disappear. After that night, nothing looked the same. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't ask for explanations. I didn't change my tone or my behavior. On the surface, I stayed exactly the same, and that's what allowed me to see everything clearly. Once you stop trusting blindly, patterns reveal themselves. People who used to include me in decisions suddenly stopped. Meetings happened without me. Conversations ended when I entered the room. Plans I had helped shape were suddenly presented as someone else's idea. And the worst part? They acted like I wouldn't notice. One afternoon, a colleague I'd worked closely with pulled me aside. His voice was low, careful. "You should be careful," he said. "About what?" I asked. He hesitated. "People are saying things." "What things?" He glanced around before answering. "That you're unreliable. That you change your mind a lot. That you're hard to work with." I almost laughed. Those words weren't random. They were precise. Crafted. Familiar. I'd heard them before, spoken softly by people I trusted, always framed as concern. "I'm just worried about how this might look for you," they'd say. "You know how people can misunderstand," they'd add. They hadn't been worried. They had been preparing the ground. I started tracing everything backward. Who benefited when I was removed from a project? Who stepped into roles I had once been considered for? Who suddenly had access to things I'd once controlled? The answers were uncomfortably consistent. The people I trusted the most were standing exactly where I used to be. I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner. Not because the signs were obvious, but because I'd ignored my instincts every time they spoke up. I had mistaken familiarity for loyalty. At home, the impact was just as heavy. Friends stopped calling. Invitations slowed, then stopped altogether. When I did see people, conversations felt guarded, polite. Like everyone already had an opinion about me and didn't need more information. The isolation was complete. That's when the real losses began. I lost income. I lost access. I lost credibility. Each loss fed the next. And still, no one said anything directly. That's how betrayal works when it's done by people who know you well. They don't attack you openly. They let the system do it for them. One evening, I sat alone, staring at my phone, scrolling through old messages. Years of trust documented in casual texts. Promises made without hesitation. Reassurances repeated so often they felt like facts. I stopped at one message in particular. "You can trust me. I'd never let anything happen to you." I closed my eyes. That was the moment something hardened inside me. Not anger. Not bitterness. Resolve. I stopped trying to fix my image. I stopped defending myself. I stopped asking for clarity from people who thrived in confusion. Instead, I started documenting everything. Dates. Decisions. Who said what and when. I paid attention to who went silent when I spoke. Who grew uncomfortable when facts were mentioned. Who avoided eye contact when accountability came close. It became obvious who had something to hide. And something else became obvious too. They assumed I was finished. They thought losing support meant losing direction. They mistook my silence for defeat, my withdrawal for collapse. They didn't realize I was finally seeing clearly. Because once you lose everything, you also lose fear. There's nothing left to protect, only truth to reclaim. And that's when I began preparing for the part they never planned for. The part where I stopped trusting the wrong people. And started trusting myself. When you lose everything, something strange happens. You stop being afraid of losing more. That's what freed me. I didn't announce any comeback. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't try to clear my name in rooms where it had already been quietly destroyed. I understood something I hadn't before. People who participate in your downfall are never convinced by explanations. They're convinced by outcomes. So I focused on rebuilding in silence. Not the version of my life they had access to, but a new one they didn't even know existed. I stopped sharing plans. I stopped talking about goals. I stopped explaining what I was doing next. The fewer words I used, the more power I felt returning. While they assumed I was drifting, I was making decisions carefully, deliberately, without witnesses. I found work through people who didn't know my past. I rebuilt income slowly, without shortcuts. I reconnected with skills I'd neglected while trying to please others. Every small win mattered because it belonged only to me. And slowly, things shifted. People who had ignored me began asking questions again. Casual ones at first. What are you up to these days? Are you still working on that thing? I answered politely, but vaguely. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I understood boundaries. The real turning point came unexpectedly. One of the people who had benefited the most from my fall reached out. Someone I had trusted completely. Their message was careful, almost nostalgic. I've been thinking about everything that happened, they wrote. Maybe we should talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I missed them. But because I finally saw the pattern clearly. They didn't want to talk because they cared. They wanted to talk because things weren't going as planned. I replied with one sentence. I'm doing well. I don't think there's anything left to discuss. That was it. No explanation. No accusation. No reopening of wounds. And that silence said more than any confrontation ever could. Over time, the truth surfaced on its own. Not dramatically, but inevitably. Stories contradicted each other. Decisions made in my absence stopped working. People started questioning outcomes that had once been accepted without scrutiny. I didn't push the truth forward. I let it catch up. Months later, I ran into one of them by chance. The same person who once reassured me, who had told me not to worry while quietly benefiting from my losses. They looked surprised to see me. You look good, they said. I smiled. I am. There was a pause. Then, hesitantly, I didn't realize how much you were carrying back then. I nodded. Neither did you. And that was the end of it. I didn't regain everything I lost. Some things don't come back. But I gained something far more valuable. I gained discernment. I learned that trust should never be given just because time has passed. That loyalty isn't proven by proximity, but by consistency when it costs something. That the people who urge you to stay calm while you're being undermined are often the ones benefiting from your silence. I lost everything the moment I trusted the wrong people. But in losing it, I found clarity. And clarity rebuilt my life on terms no one else could control.